Thank you all for coming here to worship the great God with us, with brothers and sisters. We are opening up a new sermon series in First Peter. First Peter. Anybody has any impression? First Peter. First Peter. We actually had it like 4 years ago, okay? And it's such a precious book, especially in today's time, age, and time and place is very relevant for our lives today. So, yeah, let's go into it. So, first thing is, let's go to the first two verses. This is a very brief but telling verse. First Peter 1:1 says, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to God's elect, exiles, scattered through the provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. So, we only look at two words, okay? First thing is elect and exiles. We want to look at those two words. This is a. Anybody knows about if you graduate from advanced Mandarin, okay, you know what Mao Dun is. Anybody knows Mao Dun? Some people don't know. Okay, Mao is a spear, right? Dun is a shield, right? So there's a king was being asked that hey, his people boasted that hey, we have the strongest spear built and it can destroy everything. And then later on, the king was introduced and said, hey, we have the strongest shield that can resist everything. And the king asked, oh, what happened if you poke your spear to the shield and which one wins, right? So it is an oxymoron. Okay? Oxymoron means that two terms contradict each other. Okay? Two terms contradict each other. And here we see that God's elect. The most noble, honorable thing that the creator of the universe, the whole thing that we observe, the history over time, and all the things that basically come together, who personally has chosen. Those people they are as honorable and as rich and as powerful, as glorious as God, right? But then the next verse says, exile, scattered. Exile means what? Foreigners means people are displaced or temporary living in somebody else's land, and they are aliens. They're not at their homes. So these two are contradicting each other, right? One is honorable, one is disrespected. Okay, and so these two, how do we reconcile these two terms? Is exactly what First Peter was talking about throughout the entire chapters. That you and I, are both elect, God's elect, and exiles, scattered. Okay, so the provinces of Pontus and all these areas are now in Turkey, modern day Turkey. Okay, at that time, they are definitely not where these Jews, their lifestyle or the culture are like. Okay, and so these Jews were Christians, and they were God's elect, okay? And they were scattered through the provinces, and some of them are not even Jews; they're just Christians, but their culture and their habits and their value system are totally different from these provinces. These people live there. So, what is a good term for us to understand this elect and exile? Okay? The elect and exile The elect exiles, it sounds like a refugee prince. Right? Refugee. You don't have your own land. You know, you're in other people's land. But then again, you are a noble prince. That's you and I. Refugee prince and princess. That's who we are. Okay? So how do we understand this? That at the one hand we are at the same time being despised, being looked down upon, being overlooked. Okay? But on the other hand, we are the richest, the most blessed people in Jesus. Than anybody on this earth. We are the most noble people that God called his own possession. So we will go through these chapters and try to understand how do we reconcile these two concepts. Actually these two identities, who we really are, and live our life. So first thing is that elect and exile is an oxymoron, but we can understand it, and what Apostle Peter, trying to get us into, to reconcile these contradictory terms. So, what is the nature of being in exile? If you are you're coming from from outside, and people already live here for a long time, even though they don't own this land from the very beginning, but they have been here, established their structure, governing, culture, livelihood, lifestyles, all have been established, language, right, literature, society, behavior, whatnot. But then there's a person coming in. Sometimes it's very funny that we hear people say 老外, right? 老外, he is a 老外. Right? That means that if you're in Taiwan or in China or some Asian country, there's a foreigner coming in, they say, oh, 老外 means foreigners, right? And what's more interesting is that these group of people immigrated to United States or whatever, England or France, right? And they sort of gather themselves, and like we moved to Silicon Valley, and basically we see people that not our culture or language or race. We say, oh, those foreigners, those 老外, right? You heard that? I think that's pretty funny. But we are actually the true foreigners in this land. But if you just sort of have your own bubble, then you call other people all foreigners, right? But we are the foreigners in this land, okay? And even you're born here, being a Christian is actually the foreigners, even at your home. And you are the resident alien. You are the refugee prince, okay? And so there is suffering because of that. There's a suffering that, if you go to a new place, there's a suffering. Some people are very adaptive to the any kind of environment. Even people make fun of you, you are quite okay, right? As long as it doesn't really hurt you, right? But there are times that it really hurt you, okay? And in this in Peter verse 6 on the first chapter says that the salvation give the great joy, but now for a little while you may have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. There are different places talking about the suffering of being an alien, the suffering being of foreigners or in exile. And when we look at this, these people, okay, when Peter wrote to the church in these Turkish, modern day Turkey place, the churches, this is before the great persecution. of the Emperor Nero. Okay? Emperor Nero is a Roman empire who actually persecuted Christian greatly. And these are not the time. These are the before that. So what is these big trials? The trials, what Apostle Peter was referring to, it is actually kind of the soft persecution. You know what is soft persecution means what? That your life is not threatened. Okay? Your life is not threatened. And maybe your property ownership is not threatened. That is not given. Sometimes if we look at the history, if you're being a Chinese, you cannot own property in 1900. Okay? But these Christians living in those areas, those provinces, they are actually doing okay. Okay? Life is fine. They can go on and do their business and have money and just live an okay life, good life. But then there is this soft persecution. That brings you grief and trials. Okay? There is this mocking of their faith. Okay? There's this mocking, saying, "Oh, you Christian." You know what Christian means? Christian means little Christ. Means that you are those who follow a person called Jesus Christ. It's a smear term. Okay? Christians used to be not a complimentary term. It is actually some word that people make fun of. Oh, those Christians, those little Christ, they call themselves Christ followers. Those little Christ, I know them. They believe in such thing. They believe in Christ rose from the dead. How ridiculous! Now, this kind of persecution that they face, okay? And the value. Okay? Oh, those Christians, they don't do certain things. They are kind of weird. Okay? They're kind of weird, and they believe such thing and really live by it. These are the persecution that the Christian will face. Okay? And you know why it is so important to study 1 Peter is that those people here, we don't face severe persecution like Christians in, Mid-Eastern countries, some of the Muslim countries, some of the other areas, even the Buddhists. Okay. There are different religious persecution in religious name, okay? And there's a life and death situation. But we here, we do not face those, and we praise God that we do not face that because it is hard to endure, right? But we do have these kind of persecution, right? Christianity, old school, right? Outdated, not progressive, not our age. We heard that, right? We heard that because our society has progressed to a place that we worship a new religion. It's called total human freedom. It's human freedom, and we define the freedom not as Christians define, freed to do the common good, but it's like free to do whatever we feel like, as long as I don't commit anything that hurts you. That's called freedom, and we worship that. A society as a whole worship that, and Christians will be persecuted just simply because you worship this one God. Okay? And that's not supposed to be acceptable when everybody else is worshiping other things, other gods. And sometimes we feel like, oh, wow, this is not I'm used to, right? Remember when you become a Christian, everybody celebrated as if the society also celebrated for you. You now are a good citizen. You are a member of a certain good church doing good deeds. But society has changed to be more like, the provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Asia, like these areas. For Christians, when we live there, we feel more like a foreigner. Okay? And sometimes we feel like the history of the church is on our side as well. It's almost like this movement is a natural sort of bounce back of the history that is so dominated by Christianity. The power is associated with Christianity. The law, even the law, at a certain time, there are certain places you have to believe, or you are not one of us, that we can have all the resources, do the right thing, even the art. And we have that, we understand that. And so when we come to this day, we found out there's this bounce, this force go against Christianity, church as a whole. It is the suffering we're going to face. It is a persecution we face if we continue to hold on to our faith. Okay? And we are gradually facing this post-Christendom. If you read the Bible, the Christian nation is never the intention of God. God never wants to put into laws and say, you have to believe in me. Because that's totally the opposite. That's actually the far off from it. And I think we have to realize that. Okay? We are going to be the foreigners. The Lord is going to be more against our faith than try to make us fool. And that is why the First Peter is so important for you and I to be faithful to our Christian faith today. That we no longer the cool guys. Okay? We're no longer the one that seems to have high moral, admirable, devoted Christians. In other words, we are more like these first century Christians facing suffering. And that's no suffering that is throughout the First Peter. Okay, so what do we do? What do we do? It all lies on verse 2. Verse 2 says that, continues saying, who has chosen according to the foreknowledge of God, the Father, through the sanctification, through the sanctifying work of the Spirit, to the obedience to Jesus Christ, and sprinkled with his blood. And grace and peace be yours in boundless. Sometimes people are overemphasizing this and start to have an argument. Okay? Oh, predestination, right? Foreknowledge. But this is not what Peter wants to say. Peter wants to say is this. I want you to know, being a Christian, living in any time and place, the one thing that you need to know is that you are totally connected to Jesus Christ. You are connected to him. You are, the foreknowledge of God is that Jesus Christ would die on the cross, and people that he has chosen will follow him, will identify with him, will join him in exile, because he is not the King of glory on earth. Because he is not a king of riches and respect on earth. Right? He is a king in exile. He was a king that has no place to sleep. He was a king being ridiculed for what he said, what he believed, what he obeyed. Okay? The whole book in 1 Peter is to say, hey, I know you're suffering. You, being a Christian, you suffer. Okay? But look no further than what we believe. Look up to our King. He is a king exile. Okay? And we are elect exiles. But he is a king exile. He does the exile so we can follow. And the entire gospel doesn't say that there is a benefit of your faith, that you become a better person. If you believe in Christianity, you become a more moral person. You handle which you actually would probably. And you handle your life better, which you probably would as well. Okay? But that's not the point. That's not the point. The whole point is, being a Christian, you identify with Christ. That's it. You share his suffering because your faith. And you share his glory because who he is. Okay? There's no shortcuts about this thing. You share with suffering so you can share with glory. That's what we read in Romans and what we read everywhere else, even in 1 Peter, about this suffering and glory package. We have to be totally Christ to reap the benefit of being Christ's follower. Okay? The benefit is not we have this church and loving community, which we do and we treasure. Right? The benefit is that we can join our King wherever he goes. He was the elected. He was the elect in exile. Okay? So let's look at a few places. In 1 Peter 2:4, talking about Jesus saying, as you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him. Basically, this is, again, an oxymoron. Rejected, but at the same time, precious. God sees precious, but the world see not precious. They want to reject him. Right? And that's why Jesus was in exile, even though he was elected. Most precious to God. Verse 8 says that in chapter 2, a stone that causes people to stumble and a rock that make them fall. Now, who would like that? The society would not like it. What I do, there is a rock in front of me to stumble me. When I want to get where I want to go, in the path, there's this rock that make me fall. And that is exactly Jesus, who he is. The cornerstone, the living stone, being chosen by God, most precious. But a stone that would cause people to stumble. If this rock is not your rock, then this rock is in your way. And that is not popular. It's not going to be popular. And it's not going to make you a lot of friends. But this will make you a follower of Christ. And you will make a few fellow followers of Christ as friends. Deep fellowship. And what Jesus faced before the creation of the universe was decided, you and I face the same reality today. You and I would face the same reality today. That we are elect, but we are exiled in this world. Okay? So, why would anybody want to follow this? Why would anybody want to be a Christian? Do you ask yourself, why do you want to be a Christian? Sometimes I ask myself, why do I want to be a Christian? Eh? It seems like there's suffering, right? Unpopularity. Let's look at two verses to close. 1 Peter 4:16 says, if you suffer as a Christian, do not be ashamed, but praise God that you bear that name. You know, in this world, we look for happiness, we look for joy. But reality is there are suffering. There are two kinds of suffering. One, suffer as a Christian. Suffer for Christ's sake. Two, suffer not as a Christian. Suffer not for Christ's sake. Two kinds. Even a Christian can suffer not for the sake of Christ. Right? We do that. We have that all the time. Right? But if you suffer as a Christian for the sake of Christ, this 1 Peter 4 says that, do not be ashamed. You know, when people ridicule you, do not be ashamed. When people say that you still believe in this out of date, agenda of certain people, do not be ashamed. Hold it strongly in you. It's a revelation of this living God. The one and only first person speaking revelation of the creator of the universe who has spoken to you, and you choose to believe and follow. You do not be ashamed of that when 99% of the world doesn't believe. You know, when another 20 years, according to the Pew survey, in America, only 4% of our next generation will be Christian. And they have to face 96% of non-Christians saying things about their faith. If we think we have it hard now, we just have a glimpse of it. That's why we need to support our next generation. We need to support in every way. Okay? But what's the pressures? Again, we come back to what's the reason that we believe? Well, we believe because that's the only believable thing on earth that will last. Okay? When I was in this communion, my college mates they talk a lot about aging. Okay, you might not find out, but I'm also aging. Okay, and they are aging, and they worry things about, hey, that the couple weeks ago we gathered together. It was, and they talk about, hey, I'm more interested about the health, okay, and the wealth, because I need to have money to retire. I want to prolong my healthy status as long as possible, right? And maybe I would exercise. Maybe some of them say that, oh, maybe I'll work on my relationship. That's already one other field, right? But then there's one thing that the most important thing for a person to live is why you live. People say that you can have water, without water for how long? Without air for how long? Without food for how long, without money for how long. The scariest thing is that if you don't have a vision to live, it only takes a second. And that's the most important, especially when, maybe we are young, we see that we still have time, and everything, we can just priority out. When I'm more time, I can do this. When I have more time, I can improve on that one, and I can, mend the relationship, figure out what's really important in life. But at this moment, I have so many things around me, okay? Especially Silicon Valley, fascinating, advancing of technologies, opportunities, smart people talking, tremendous, insightful things and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, when you're getting closer to see the Lord, even you're in the bed of this coronavirus, what is the thing that make you tick? And 16 has a answer that you bear God's name. Okay? No matter how you live, you can bear God's name if you suffer with Him, if you suffer for Him, if you suffer in His name. But you can also live with Him, joy with Him, rejoice with Him, right? Basically, if you follow Jesus, you are separated, you are chosen, you have a clear vision of your life would last you to eternity. And that's the most important thing. Because everything else is going to fade away. This contemporary modern society's theories, what they cherish, who they worship, all these will change. Can you imagine that what's being worshipped today, move it to 20 years back, how 20 years back people see this? Even we're talking about secular people see secular people. It's already totally different, right? Those Roman Empire, the strongest one, okay, can collapse. Anything can just be wiped away. And we will say, vanity, vanity. Everything I have done under the sun is a vanity. Except this, okay? If we live a life as a Christian, suffer and rejoice in it, we will praise God, and because we bear His name. Our life bear His name. Every day is significant because our life, I am a Christian, and that brings so much joy in me. I'm a Christian, and I bear God's name, and I have a value, a mission, a vision that is God's, the imperishable, everlasting, the most beautiful, the most powerful. Bear the name of Jesus. Okay? And also, Edward touched that last sermon also. Rejoice in as much as you participate in the suffering of Christ, so that you may overjoy when His glory is revealed. So this go hand in hand. You live today's world with God's name in you. And when we face that, we face the joy of the future glory. It's beyond our imagination. The glory will come and our joy will be abundant, will be overflowing, will not be end. Someone told me a Christian sister went through this virus and have a record, have a video record of how her how she went through all this terrible disease. And it's very hard to bear. I heard that the virus make you the life very hard. You cannot breathe, right? You ache, every part of muscle ache. And she actually every day talked to a Christian through FaceTime, okay? Through video. That every day that she was replenished. You know, when your physical is weak, then your mind sometimes weaken. But you and I, the healthy ones, we can help replenish this hope, assurance, affirmation of this glory of this living, being separated by this world, and have this glorious hope of the future. That even if we die, we will be part of this future glory. We will be given. We will share God's glory. Not only God is glorious, we will be glorious as well. And that is our strength, how we live today's Christian life. And we're going to move on and read more about 1 Peter, but 1 Peter connect us directly to Christ. Connect our living directly to the living of Christ. And he also connects our death and resurrection directly to the death and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, we just want to thank you in this world of darkness, in this world of random acts. Freedom bring the cost of freedom, that we lost direction. God, give us this assurance that in your name, that we live a worthy life. In your name, that we receive future glory of yours. Help us to join you, Jesus, join your walk on earth where we walk.